Okay, good morning. We're continuing Hilchos Mikvaos Reish Aleph. We're starting today with Nun Beis. Okay. Habal Ariv Mikva Paso Ochaser Im Mikva Kasher Lahachshira. Okay, so you have a pit of water or a mikvah, whatever, and it's pasul, or it's lacking 40 se'ah. Okay, there's two possibilities. So then it's right, and there's another mikvah that's next to it that is kosher, but you just want to have another mikvah. For whatever the reason is, you want to use the other mikvah. Okay, there could be a myriad of reasons. One might be more deep and dangerous. The other one is more shallow and safer. Whatever it is, losing your kalim, whatever you want to use it for. Tznius reasons, doesn't matter. Right, you want to refilter the water, empty the water, and refill it like we do in our mikvahs. Okay, so then you want to make it kosher. So what do we do? Or you have another situation. It's another scenario. You have two mikvahs, but they're both pasul because they're chaser. That's the case. They're both chaser. Neither one of them has 40 se'ah, but if you would combine them together and make it one, then there would be 40. Like, let's say each one is 21, for example, or 39, for example. But each one by itself is not 40 se'ah. And you want to combine them in order to make it kosher. Either combine them, like you add each one, you combine them so that they now become bigger, they become 40 se'ah, or one was kosher and one was pasul, and you want to combine them to make it attached so that now they're both kosher. Okay? Tzarich shehei nekev shebenehem rochav kishvoferet hanod. So one way to make it kosher is you make a hole to connect the two, right? They're two separate, we're going to see, they're two separate burrows. They're connected through a side wall, and you want to connect them, so the hole must be the size of kishvoferet hanod. Right? We had this many times. Basically, you take your two fingers and you just roll them around, and that's the size. So according to Rav Chaim Na, it would need to be at least 4 centimeters. And according to other opinions, it can reach close to, and according to many of our fingers, it's closer to 5 centimeters. So when you make a mikvah, generally speaking, there always it's a pipe that's the size of about 2 inches, 5 or 6 centimeters, at least 5. That's how they make them. Okay, 5 or 6 usually, sometimes more. Okay. So that's to connect the mikveh you're dipping in with the mayim she'uvim to the original otsar or bor from the rainwater. Okay, so the size has to be a full circle of kishvoferet hanod. So if you're going to make it square, then the walls of the square must be, we'll call it 5 centimeters. So that's 5 by 5. And yeah, so it doesn't go by area. It needs its full shvoferet hanod. Very good question. Now, again, we're going to see that sometimes, and whenever they build a mikveh, that's always how it is, and that's what it is. But we're going to see cases where it can be much less than shvoferet hanod. Basically, we're going to get to this if the connection goes above the walls between the two mikvahs. Let's say you're going to take we're going to see this. Let's say you take 2 pits and you overflow them so that on the top it's connected with water. Since it's connected by overflowing the walls, then you don't need a full area of shvoferet hanod. We'll get there. But okay. The other thing also is the Shach points out, you need shvoferet hanod to connect them of Hashaka. This is the din of Hashaka. Whenever, right, and Hashaka is a proper chibur that you can combine them, or one can make the other one kosher, right? As long as the water is clean. If one of the waters is dirty or a different color from a masha, so that's previous sugya, which could be a problem. But what does the Shach point out over here, which the Shulchan Aruch does say beferush here and later on, is you need shvoferet hanod if it's a psul de'araisa. If you have a mikvah that's pasul de'araisa, and a mikvah, or it's missing, in a mikveh that's kosher, right? You want to connect them to do hashaka on a din daraisa, then we need shofar tanod. But the mission is clear, and no one really argues. If it's only a psul darabanan, then you need kechut hase'ara, just a mashu. So our mikvahs may be a psul daraisa, might be a psul mayim she'uvim, right? We know mayim she'uvim, if it's most, the Shulchan Aruch and most Rishonim, almost all say, mayim she'uvim is only a din darabanan, which would mean in our mikvahs, technically, it would be okay if it was only chechut hase'ara. We always build it with shofar to know it anyway. It's according to Rabbeinu Tam that if the entire mikvah is mayim she'uvim, that's a daraisa. And the Rama says we should definitely paskin or follow, at least lachatchila, we should follow the Rabbeinu Tam. So certainly, according to the Rama, we must make our mikvahs with shofar tanod, and that's what we do. But just point out, if it's only, and it depends, as long as it's minority, depends if it's minority or majority, that's Rabbeinu Tam, if it's mayim shuvim zaris darabanan. But okay. Haga v'kiluach hamayim yeh kerochav hanekev, and the water flow must fill up that shofar tanod, right? It's not only enough to have a pipe, a shofar tanod, it has to be full of water for shofar tanod, for it to be hashaka and a chibur. Ula'achar shenita reva psul ima kasher. Now, you make your kosher mikvah, and you have your bor, otsar, the original, we'll call it otsar hashaka, the otsar of megashamim, the bor of megashamim. That's your original kosher mikvah, right, from rainwater. We don't touch that water, we don't change that water. You make your other water that we go into for dipping, bor tevila, whatever where we dip inside, and that we pour in the water from the faucet, or really through zriya, but okay. The point is, if we're calling that mayim shuvim and we're using that mikvah as hashaka, so once you do hashaka, then you could close up that hole between the two mikvahs, and then that mikvah that we make for going into, for dipping, that's kosher la'olam vad. Until you drain it and refill it up, because you refilled it up, you got rid of it. But once you make it kosher with hashaka, it's kosher forever. Even if something happens to the Mei Geshamim, the bor of Mei Geshamim, get a leak and all the water disappears. And there's not going to be rain for 6 months. That mikvah is 100% kosher. And that's the halacha. There's no question about it. Let's keep reading. One moment you did hashaka, nishar le'olam behechshero, it's forever kosher, afilu nistam hanekev acharkach, even afterwards. Here, so now let me mention, the Shach quotes the Rabbeinu Yerucham, very famous, I think we mentioned this in the shir in the past, that he holds, once that the mikvah is only kosher when it's open, when that hashaka is actually happening, when that pipe is open. But if it gets sealed off, Rabbeinu Yerucham holds it's pasul. The mayim she'uvim mikvah that we made kosher, it's no longer kosher once it gets sealed. So therefore we are lechatchila, we're machmer. Lechatchila, we are definitely machmer. Every mikvah will always have that hole open. Whenever a man or woman goes to the mikvah, that hole must be open, so that we are makayim the din of, or the opinion of Rabbeinu Yerucham, that hashaka has to actually be active, otherwise that mikvah is not going to be kosher anymore. And so that is why many mikvos will have a second bor, or a third bor, whatever, a second original bor. So now you have 3 in the room. You might not see the 3, but okay, there's really 3 over there. And the other one is what we call zriya. We explained that already, but there's the reason why the many mikvos nowadays, we're extra machmer, not to rely only on the hashaka, because to be makayim the opinion of the Rabbeinu Yerucham. Because what might happen where sometimes that pipe for Hashaka gets closed. Let's say sometimes they close it all the time so that you have less water interchange. Or whenever they want to empty the water of the dipping water and fill up a new water, they might close it. So for all these reasons, there are times when it can get closed, and we're afraid if you only rely on a mikvah of Hashaka that someone will forget to open it. So for that reason, and that's the only reason why they make a whole nother mikvah of otsar of zriya, so that just in case, because just in case, according to Rabbeinu Yerucham, if that mikvah is kosher, pasel, if Hashaka is not working, so that doesn't help you. So that's why we used an otsar of zriya to make sure that you don't need it. The dipping mikvah got water from the otsar hazriya. And so therefore you don't even need them. You only need one or the other. You either need an otsar of zriya or you only need an otsar of hashaka. You never need both. But in order to be makayim every shita, in case it comes that one of them didn't work, now you have the other opinion. I'll explain again afterwards if it's not clear. Okay, let's read inside. Kol shiyama shivert anod afilu davar shehu mibriat hamayim safek im anekev rachak shivert anod im lav pasel. Anytime you have that shvoferet hanod, if that, let's say you originally had a shvoferet hanod, but it got sealed up with something, and so even though it originally had shvoferet hanod, even though it's getting sealed up, I don't know, dirty parts of water, whatever it is, some dirt, some crud, I don't know, algae, whatever is filling up that hole, it's mamayat the shvoferet hanod. So if when you're doing hashaka, you don't have a clear clearance filled with water of shofar tanot, it doesn't work. And it's right. Filled diversion even though it comes from the water. I don't know about everything, but okay. And then there's any obstruction, we'll close it off. Again, if it was originally you had hashaka, then we paskin mikar din leolam vad. It's a problem. You don't even need it at all. We're talking about you never had a moment when it was totally clean and open and clear. And anytime you have a case of a suffix, we have to go to lechumra. If we're talking about, generally speaking, we go lechumra. Okay. Right, and it depends what the situation is. Often this case of shofar tanod is a din daraisa, because if it would only be a case of darabanan, we learned kechut se'ara is enough. So generally speaking, if you need shofar tanod, it's a din daraisa, and if it's a case of darabanan, you only need a chut se'ara. So shofar tanod, if it's a question daraisa, we go lechumra. Okay. Im yesham nekavim dakim harbek mistarfin k'shofar tanod im mikvah echad shalim v'asheni chaser. So if it depends what the case is. If sometimes you can have many little holes and they add up together to shofar tanod. That works if one is shalim. You have at least start off with a kosher mikvah. And then you're using that to make the other mikvah. As long as you have at least one of them kosher, then you don't need a complete solid area and replace it without any interruptions. A complete solid area, shofar tanod, that's only necessary if they're both chaser and you need to combine them to add them together to be 40. So then it must be completely open without any lines in between. Otherwise, if one is 100% shalim and you're just using the other one, it's okay if you add up a bunch of holes. Umutter lachpor mikvah b'tzad hanar v'litbol ba afal pi she'ein ba arba'im se'ah deha arach elchule michalchala v'oyu samuch lenar v'anu roi nachalchot shebeneim shamayim bayim min hanahar derech achilchol dahainu min hakavim dakim shebekarka have chibur. So here the Rama points out that you can even have essentially microscopic holes. In other words, it's a very thin wall between them of dirt. And you see that the water is flowing through. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to know this or see this, but if you have a case where you know that the water is seeping right through the wall, right through it, so then even though you might not see the actual holes, but you see the water flowing through, so then he says that's fine because you get all the holes together are going to be more than kishoferet hanod. Hava, im shneim chaserim, but if they're both missing, 39 and 39, or 21 and 21, for example, ein anakavim adakim mitztarfim l'kishoferet hanod. So for that, the little holes aren't enough to connect the two. V'hu adin im chalak mikvah b'sal or b'sak. If you have a mikvah and you divide it up with a sal or a sak, im ein shir mikvah b'tzad echad pasol. If you don't have, even if if you don't have a kishoferet hanod or opening, or you don't have enough on one side, then it's even if it goes through the basket, or you have like a screen. Both sides, it's not. If both sides are not a shear, then let's say you want to hang up a screen between the two, right? A bunch of fine holes. So it's not going to help you if both sides are not 30, but otherwise it does work. Okay. Habala hakshir mikvah sha'uv, right? Nun gimel. Habala hakshir mikvah sha'uv mi mikvah shalim she'eno sha'uv. Now, you have one mikvah that's mayim she'uvim and one mikvah that's not mayim she'uvim. That's kosher. Af al pi she'eno mashiko ela kise'ara kasher. So this is what I said before. As long as it's kechut ha'se'ara, then that's fine. So our mikvahs, according to the Maran Shulchan Aruch, that's fine. You don't need kishoferet hanod. But according to the Rama, you do. Okay? Va'afilu ein mei hashaka roin penei ha'avir. Even if the water, right, that's what I meant to say, the hashaka is going through the sides of the wall or underneath, like our mikvahs. So then, according to the Machaber, you only need kechut hase'ara. Okay. Right. That's what we were saying. The only time it works, kechut hase'ara, is if it's a psul derabanan. About b'psul deraisa, anytime it's a psul deraisa, right? Be'inan kishoferet hanod, kamosh nitba'er, but then you need a full area kishoferet hanod, right? Well, as we just mentioned before, it depends if it has to be congruous or not. Aval bepsul deraisa be'inan kishoferet hanod, kamosh nitba'er, v'afilo bepsul she'iva yesh cholkin v'chein ra'oi laharot. And that's the Rama who's saying, it's the Rama is saying we should be lachatchila machmer like Rabbeinu Tam and consider our waters and our mikvahs mayim she'uvim as a psul de'araisa, and we need kishoferet hanod. Nun daled. Kotel shebein shnei mikvaos shenistak. Now, let's say you have a wall between two mikvahs and you have a crack in between. Mitzad litzad. You have a full crack, right? You can peek through from one side to the other. Afilu kol shehu, even if it's just a kol shehu, so you have a crack that's a kol shehu, a thin little crack, a line, and it's going between the two mikvahs. So normally we say you need kishoferet hanod to connect two mikvahs. Here we're going to say, wait a second. If it's a vertical crack, lesheti, again, if you look in the Mishnah, I'm showing him it's a bit of a machlokas, but let's just follow here. If it's lesheti, vertical, so then mitztarif, then it's good enough. You don't need kishoferet hanod because it's a vertical crack. Le'erev, but if it's going to be la'ariv, oh, sorry, you're right. If it's lesheti, mitztarif la'arev shnei hamikvos lahachshira, then that works. Ve'im le'erev, if it's horizontal, einam mitztarfim. If it's a horizontal crack, then it's not. If it's a horizontal crack, so then it's not mitztarif. If it's horizontal, then it must be a full area of a circle of, we'll call it, I don't know, 4 or 5 centimeters. So what's the difference between sheti and erev? So the different explanations. The kitzer, if it's vertical, we assume it's not going to get, we assume it's always going to stay. It's a permanent crack. And since it's a permanent crack and it's just a crack, we let it go. And we
be longer than the diameter, the vertical be longer than the diameter of the shofar tanot.
I'm not aware if it needs. I don't know if it needs to be. It would make sense that the vertical crack must be at least 4 to 5 centimeters to be a connection. I'm not positive, but it does make sense, and we'll see even so more so why it's likely to be true. I don't recall seeing anyone discuss that, but you'll see if we're going over the wall, it must be kishvaferet tanod, like you're saying. You'll see in a moment. Hopefully, we'll get there real soon. Okay, at the end of the seif, yeah, we'll get there. So then, if it's vertical, we assume it's permanent. So the opening is permanent, and we call that enough for it to be in eruv, hashaka. If it's horizontal, the logic behind horizontal is we're afraid or we assume over time it'll collapse because it's just a hairline fracture or a thin fracture. It's less than kshver tanod. As time, like the wall, maybe dirt or stuff, will end up coming down and seal it up. Since we assume it might or it will close up over time, therefore we assume it's sealed up right now, and it's not. Again, it seems to be more of a halacha l'moshe misinai type of din, but that's what some of the mafarshim explain. Okay, let's keep going. V'im nifratz hakotel lamala zelezeh. So here, this is what you were saying. Now, what happens if the wall between the two mikvaos, or two pits, the wall breaks down? And now the water is flowing over the wall from one to another. It's not through the wall, it's over the wall. Okay, the wall gets lowered and it's over. So then the halacha is you don't need a full area, a circle of 4 or 5 centimeters. All you need is al room klipat hashum v'al rochav keshoferet anod kasher. So then you just need, it's not enough to have moisture of tofeach al manat lahatfiach. That's not enough. You still need a flow, but it needs to be super thin, like onion peel. So it still has to be mamashas that you can see water connecting it, but the thinnest amount is enough. But can't just be kechuta se'ara. It does have to be, since we're talking about dini deraisa, it still has to be kishvoferet hanod. In other words, not a one line of 4 or 5 centimeters, right?
So that one dick is higher than the other.
No, well, let's say they're equal. Let's keep it simple and without bringing in too many different scenarios. So it means the water is overflowing from one to another. They could be the same 2 equal mikvahs, and the dividing wall between them became lower, so that the water is connecting. Again, there's all kinds of scenarios you can make up. Let's just keep reading. Haga. Let's say you had a pillar of stones dividing up, a wall of stones dividing up two mikvos. Then you start removing the top layer of rocks that are separating the mikvah. So now they're attached from one to another. Kerochav kishoferet hanod, berum klipas hashum. As long as you remove enough rocks that it's wide enough of the kiluach, the water is overflowing like a waterfall type of thing, that's wide enough of kishoferet hanod, right? We'll call it 5 centimeters, whatever it is. So then, as long as it's a thin layer of flowing over, berum klipas hashum, as long as it's the height of an onion peel. So then, sagi. The only time you need a full circle is if it's a hole between 2 walls.